My name is Bertha, and I am 53 years old. For 18 years, I raised my son alone after my divorce, pouring every ounce of my heart into giving him the life he deserved. Every Mother's Day, I dreamed of the moment when he would look at me with gratitude, when we would sit together and remember all we had overcome. This year, when he called to invite me to lunch, I thought that moment had finally come. But there was something different in his voice, something I could not quite place. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid. I was wrong. Before we continue, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because what I discovered at that restaurant shattered everything I thought I knew about motherhood. I married David when I was 22 years old. He was a civil engineer, ambitious and charming, with a smile that made me believe in forever. We built what I thought was a solid life together. A modest house in the suburbs, weekend barbecues, quiet evenings watching television on our worn couch. When Jason was born 3 years later, I felt complete. I remember holding him in the hospital, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, thinking this was all I would ever need. For 12 years, I believed we were happy. David traveled frequently for work, sometimes gone for weeks at construction sites across the state. I did not mind. I had Jason. I had routines. Monday morning pancakes, Thursday afternoon library visits, Friday night movies on the couch with popcorn I made in our old pot. Jason and I were a team. Then one evening, when Jason was 12, I found a receipt in David's jacket pocket. Dinner for two at an expensive steakhouse downtown. He had been in town that night. He had told me he was working late. When I confronted him, he did not deny it. He just looked at me with tired eyes and said he had been unhappy for years. 3 months later, he moved out. He did not fight for custody. He signed the papers, packed his belongings into his truck, and drove away. I watched from the kitchen window as Jason stood at his bedroom window upstairs, his small face pressed against the glass, watching his father leave. That night, I went into Jason's room and sat on the edge of his bed. He was crying silently, the way children do when they are trying to be brave. I pulled him into my arms and whispered, "I will be both mother and father to you. I promise you will never feel alone." And I kept that promise. I worked as an elementary school teacher at the local public school, grading papers at the kitchen table until midnight, waking at 5:30 to prepare breakfast before Jason's alarm went off at 6. My salary was not much, barely enough to cover the mortgage and bills, so I took tutoring jobs in the evenings. Sometimes I worked with 3 students back to back from 6 to 9 at night, coming home exhausted but grateful for the extra $100 a week. There were beautiful moments, too. When Jason turned 14, he woke up early one Saturday and made me pancakes for my birthday. They were lumpy and slightly burnt, but I cried as I ate every bite. He stood there in his oversized pajamas, grinning proudly, and said, "You always make them for me, Mom. I wanted to do it for you." We watched Marvel movies together every Friday night, even when he grew into his teenage years and his friends invited him out. He always chose me. When he graduated high school, I sat in the audience with tears streaming down my face as he walked across that stage. Afterward, he found me in the crowd, threw his arms around me and whispered, "You did it, Mom. We did it." I had never felt prouder. Jason went to the state university 40 minutes away, close enough to come home on weekends. He did come home almost every Sunday, helping me with grocery shopping, fixing the leaking faucet I could never afford to hire someone to repair. During those years, I turned down dates, ignored the interest of a kind man at church who asked me to coffee twice. I told myself I needed to focus on Jason. He was my purpose. Then 3 years ago, David came back into our lives. Jason was 25, working as an IT analyst at a firm downtown. David called him out of the blue one Tuesday evening. I only knew because Jason mentioned it casually over dinner that Sunday. "Dad called," he said, twirling spaghetti on his fork. "He wants to meet up." I felt my stomach drop, but I forced a smile. "That is nice, honey. You should see him." David had remarried. Her name was Linda. She was 35 years old, 15 years younger than David, who is now 53, the same age I am now. Linda worked as a marketing manager at a tech company, drove a white BMW, and had the kind of polished confidence I had never possessed. She wore designer clothes and posted perfectly filtered photos on social media. When Jason showed me a picture of her at dinner one night, I felt a pang of inadequacy, so sharp it took my breath away. David was different too. He had climbed the corporate ladder and now ran a successful construction company. He owned a large house in the nicer part of town, the kind with a 3-car garage and a landscaped front yard. He started inviting Jason to things: basketball games with courtside seats, golf outings at the country club, test drives of luxury cars at dealerships where David apparently knew the managers personally. I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to believe that Jason deserved to have his father in his life. So I smiled when Jason talked about their outings, even as something inside me twisted painfully. "He is still your dad," I told him. "It is good that you are reconnecting." But Linda was the one who worried me most. She had no children of her own, and she seemed to latch onto Jason with an intensity that felt unnatural. She invited him to brunches, sent him care packages with expensive gadgets, commented on all his social media posts with enthusiastic praise. Jason started mentioning her constantly. "Linda said this restaurant is amazing. Linda thinks I should try this new gym. Linda knows someone who can help me with my resume." I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself this was healthy. But deep down, I felt something slipping away from me, something I could not name. The changes started small, almost imperceptible, like the first cracks in a dam before it bursts. Jason began coming home less frequently. The Sunday dinners became every other week, then once a month. When I asked if everything was okay, he assured me he was just busy with work. "You know how it is, Mom, deadlines and projects." But I knew his job had not changed. What had changed was the growing list of invitations from David and Linda. His appearance shifted too. Jason had always been casual, favoring jeans and graphic tees, comfortable sneakers worn thin at the soles. Suddenly, he showed up wearing crisp, button-down shirts and leather shoes that looked expensive. His hair was styled differently, swept back with product instead of falling naturally across his forehead the way it had since he was a boy. On his 26th birthday, I baked his favorite chocolate cake from scratch, the recipe I had perfected over years of practice. I decorated the small dining table with streamers left over from a school event, set out the mismatched plates we had used for decades. I waited. He called at 8 o'clock that evening to say he had already eaten dinner with David and Linda. They had taken him to a steakhouse downtown, the kind where entrees cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. "But I will come by tomorrow and have some cake, I promise," he said. He never came. Thanksgiving that year, he forgot to call. I ate leftover turkey alone in front of the television, the silence in the house so heavy it felt like drowning. The comparisons began subtly woven into casual conversations, but they stung nonetheless. I gave him a sweater for Christmas one I had spent weeks knitting in the evenings after work, every stitch made with love. He thanked me, hugged me, but later that week when he visited, I noticed he was not wearing it. Instead, he had on a cashmere sweater in charcoal gray. "Linda picked this up for me when she was in Italy last month," he said, running his hand over the soft fabric. "She has great taste." I swallowed the hurt and smiled. "It is beautiful." When I suggested we catch a movie like we used to, he hesitated. "Dad got premiere tickets for that new action film. Maybe next time." Next time never came. The contrast between my life and theirs became impossible to ignore. My Honda Civic was 20 years old, the passenger door creaking when it opened. the air conditioning broken for 3 summers running. David drove a sleek Mercedes. My apartment was a small 2-bedroom in an older building. The carpet stained the cabinets outdated. David and Linda lived in a sprawling house with marble countertops and a pool in the backyard. One Sunday afternoon, Jason came by for a brief visit. He walked through the apartment slowly, his eyes taking in the faded furniture, the walls that needed repainting, the kitchen where the linoleum was peeling at the corners. He sighed, a sound so full of disappointment it pierced me. "Mom," he said gently, "why did you never do more with your life?" I stared at him, stunned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you have been teaching at the same school for 30 years. You live in the same apartment. You never traveled, never tried anything new. Linda managed to build a whole career and still has time for everything. She is always doing something interesting. Do you not want more than this?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that I had given up every dream, every opportunity, every chance at more because I was busy raising him. Because I was the one packing his lunches and attending his parent-teacher conferences and sitting in hospital waiting rooms when he broke his arm at age 9. Because I chose him over everything else. But I did not say any of that. I just nodded and said, "I am happy with my life, Jason." He looked unconvinced. Linda became the standard against which I was measured. "Linda is so inspiring," he said one evening over the phone. "She just ran a half marathon. She is training for a full one next year." I had not run in decades. My knees ached from standing all day in the classroom. "Linda is learning French. She thinks it would be fun to take a trip to Paris." I had never left the country. I could barely afford a weekend at the beach. I tried to keep up. I really did. I signed up for a cooking class at the community center, hoping to learn the kind of gourmet meals Jason mentioned enjoying at David's house. I bought new clothes from a discount store, trying to look more put together. I researched topics Jason talked about, trying to engage him in conversations about things that interested him now. For his birthday the following year, I saved for 3 months to buy him a wristwatch. Not a Rolex, nothing close, but a decent watch from a department store that cost me $200, nearly a week of my salary. I wrapped it carefully and gave it to him when he stopped by briefly on his birthday. He opened it, smiled, thanked me, and set it on the table. "This is really nice, Mom. Thank you." A week later, I visited him at his apartment unannounced, wanting to drop off some leftovers. I noticed a different watch on his wrist, heavy and gleaming. "That is new," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh yeah, Dad gave it to me. It is a Rolex. He said every man needs a good watch." Jason glanced at his wrist with obvious pride. The watch I had given him was nowhere in sight. I began calling him every evening around 8, the time we used to talk regularly. The first few weeks he answered, but our conversations grew shorter. "I am kind of busy, Mom. Can I call you back?" But he never did. Eventually, he stopped answering altogether. I would leave voicemails. "Hi, honey. Just wanted to hear your voice. Call me when you can." The callbacks became rare, then non-existent. I felt him slipping away, and I did not know how to stop it. Mother's Day was 3 days away when my phone rang on a Thursday evening. I was grading spelling tests at the kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold beside me. When I saw Jason's name on the screen, my heart leapt. He had not called in 2 weeks. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "Hey, Mom." His voice was cheerful, almost too cheerful, like someone trying to compensate for something. "I wanted to talk to you about Mother's Day." My pulse quickened. "Yes. I want to take you out to lunch. You deserve it. Let me treat you to something nice." Tears pricked my eyes. This was what I had been waiting for. This was the reconnection I had been praying for during sleepless nights. "Jason, that would be wonderful." "Great. There is this Italian place downtown Bella Vista. Really nice. Let's meet there Sunday at 1 in the afternoon. Bella Vista, I repeated, committing it to memory. Do we need a reservation? Already taken care of, Mom. I hesitated, then asked the question I needed answered. Will it be just us? There was a pause so brief I almost missed it. Of course, just us. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, the spelling tests forgotten, and cried. But these were not tears of sadness. These were tears of relief, of hope, of a mother who thought she was getting her son back. I spent the next 3 days preparing. On Friday, I walked to the discount clothing store 6 blocks from my apartment. I searched through the racks for nearly an hour before finding a navy blue dress, simple but elegant, with a modest neckline and sleeves that hit just below the elbow. It cost $40 more than I usually spend on clothes, but I told myself it was worth it. This was a special occasion. Saturday afternoon, I walked to the hair salon I passed every day on my way to the grocery store, but had never entered. The stylist, a young woman with bright pink highlights, washed and styled my hair, blow-drying it smooth and curling the ends. It cost another $30. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked almost elegant. That evening, I stood in my bedroom, the new dress hanging on the closet door. I tried it on 3 times, checking the fit, adjusting the hem, making sure everything looked right. I thought about what I would say to Jason. I would tell him I was proud of him. I would tell him I understood he needed space to grow. I would not mention David or Linda. This would be about us, about rebuilding what we had nearly lost. I opened my journal, a worn notebook I had kept since Jason was born, filled with memories and milestones. I wrote, "Tomorrow I get my son back." I underlined it twice. Sleep would not come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining the lunch. I pictured us laughing over pasta, sharing stories, reconnecting in the way I had been desperately craving. I imagined Jason reaching across the table, taking my hand and saying, "I am sorry, Mom. I have not been fair to you." At 7 in the morning, I gave up on sleep. I showered, taking extra care, shaving my legs, even though the dress would cover them. I applied makeup, something I rarely did anymore, blending foundation to hide the dark circles under my eyes, adding mascara to make my lashes look fuller. I put on the dress, slipped into the low heels I had bought years ago for a wedding, and looked at myself in the full-length mirror attached to my closet door. I looked like a woman who had tried, and that was all I could do. On the small table in the living room sat a framed photo of Jason at 5 years old, his arms wrapped around my neck, both of us laughing at something I could not remember anymore. I picked it up, traced his face with my finger, and whispered, "Today, things get better." The drive downtown took 30 minutes. Traffic was heavier than usual, families heading out for Sunday brunch, couples walking hand in hand along the sidewalks. I circled the block twice before finding a parking spot in a public garage 3 blocks from the restaurant. The fee was $15. I handed the attendant a 20 and told him to keep the change. Walking in heels I was not accustomed to wearing, I made my way down the sidewalk past shop windows displaying Mother's Day specials, past cafes where people sat outside enjoying the warm May sunshine. My feet ached by the second block, but I ignored the discomfort. Bella Vista came into view. It was a charming building, brick with ivy climbing the walls, a wooden sign hanging above the entrance. Through the large front windows, I could see white tablecloths, soft lighting couples and families enjoying their meals. It looked expensive. It looked like the kind of place I would never go on my own. I checked my phone. 12:50. I was 10 minutes early. I stopped on the sidewalk, pulled out my compact mirror, and checked my lipstick. A light pink, nothing too bold. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and walked toward the door. This was it. This was the moment everything would change. The door opened with a soft chime. The hostess, a young woman in a black dress, greeted me with a professional smile. "Welcome to Bella Vista. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the nervous flutter in my chest. "My son made it. Under Jason, I think. Or maybe under my name Bertha." She glanced down at the reservation book, her finger tracing down the list. Her smile faltered slightly. "I am sorry I do not see either of those names here. What time was your reservation?" 1:00. She checked again, flipping back a page, then forward. "I am not finding it. Are you sure it was for today?" Panic began to creep in. Yes, he said 1:00 today, Sunday, Mother's Day." The hostess looked sympathetic. "Let me double-check with the manager." She disappeared through a doorway, leaving me standing in the small entryway, my hands clutching my purse. I pulled out my phone and called Jason. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I hung up and immediately called again. Voicemail. I sent a text, my fingers trembling slightly. "Hi, honey, I am here. Where are you?" 5 minutes passed. The hostess returned with an older man in a suit, presumably the manager. "Ma'am, we do not have a reservation under those names. It is possible there was a miscommunication." "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, he definitely said Bella Vista. 1:00. The manager exchanged a glance with the hostess. "Would you like to wait at the bar, or I can seat you now if you would like? We have availability." I looked past them into the dining room. Families everywhere, mothers with their children, smiles and laughter and flowers on tables. "I will take a table," I heard myself say. "He must be running late." The hostess led me to a small table near the window. It was set for 2, a single rose in a slim vase between the place settings. She pulled out my chair, handed me a menu, and said softly, "Your server will be right with you." I sat down facing the door so I could see when Jason arrived. I placed my phone on the table beside my plate screen, up waiting for it to light up with a message. A young waiter approached, probably in his early 20s, with slicked back hair and a friendly demeanor. "Good afternoon. Can I start you with something to drink?" "Just water, please. I am waiting for someone." He nodded and walked away. I looked around the restaurant. At the table next to mine, a woman who looked to be in her early 50s sat surrounded by 3 adult children. They were laughing, passing plates of food around the mother, beaming with obvious joy. One of her daughters handed her a bouquet of roses. The mother pressed the flowers to her chest and leaned over to kiss her daughter's cheek. I looked away, my throat tight. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. I checked my phone compulsively, refreshing my messages, making sure the volume was up. Nothing. I called Jason again, straight to voicemail this time, as if his phone had been turned off. The waiter returned. "Ma'am, are you ready to order?" "Just a little longer, please." He glanced at the empty chair across from me, his expression softening with something that looked like pity. "Take your time." 30 minutes. I watched the door, my heart jumping every time it opened, only to sink when it was not Jason. Couples walked in, families, a group of women clearly celebrating together. But no Jason. At 1:45, the waiter came back. His voice was gentle. "Would you like to order now?" I realized then that he was not coming. Whatever had happened, wherever he was not coming to this restaurant. I nodded slowly. "Yes, I will have the chicken piccata." "Any appetizer? We have a special today." "No, thank you. Just the entree." He wrote it down and left. I sat there staring at the rose in the vase, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Or maybe no one was looking at me at all. Maybe I was invisible. The food arrived 20 minutes later. It looked delicious. Tender chicken in a lemon caper sauce, roasted vegetables on the side, a small portion of pasta. The kind of meal I would have enjoyed under different circumstances. I picked up my fork and took a bite. It tasted like nothing. I ate mechanically each bite, an effort to swallow past the lump in my throat. Around me, the sounds of celebration continued. Clinking glasses, laughter. A child's voice calling out, "I love you, Mommy." I thought about all the Mother's Days before this one. The handmade cards Jason used to make in elementary school covered in glitter and misspelled words. The breakfast in bed he attempted when he was 10, spilling orange juice on my sheets, but looking so proud. The year he was 16 and bought me a necklace with his first paycheck from his part-time job at the grocery store. I still wore that necklace. I was wearing it now, hidden beneath the collar of my dress. When the plate was half empty, I set down my fork. I could not eat anymore. The waiter appeared almost immediately. "How was everything?" "It was very good, thank you." "Would you like to see our dessert menu?" I should have said no. I should have asked for the check and left. But something in me was not ready to go home. Not ready to face the empty apartment, the silence, the undeniable truth of what this day meant. "Yes, please." He brought the menu. I ordered tiramisu without really looking at the options. It was just something to do, something to fill the time, something to delay the inevitable moment when I would have to stand up and walk out of this restaurant alone. The tiramisu arrived on a white plate dusted with cocoa powder, a mint leaf on the side for decoration. It looked beautiful. I picked up the small fork and took a bite. The sweetness made me feel vaguely nauseous. I set the fork down and reached for my phone. It had become a reflex, this constant checking. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. I opened Facebook, telling myself I would just scroll for a minute, just distract myself, just see what other people were doing on this sunny Sunday afternoon. The feed loaded, posts from former colleagues wishing their mothers a happy day, photos of brunches and bouquets and families gathered together. I scrolled past them, feeling more isolated with each swipe, and then I stopped. A post from Jason, 30 minutes ago. My heart began to pound so hard I could hear it in my ears. The photo loaded slowly, piece by piece. A restaurant. Not this one. Somewhere nicer with dark wood paneling and candles on every table. Jason sat at a round table, smiling widely at the camera. To his left, David, looking older but still handsome in a polo shirt. To his right, Linda. Linda wore a floral dress, her hair perfectly styled in loose waves. She was holding a large bouquet of pink roses. In front of her sat an elaborate meal wine glasses, a cake with Happy Mother's Day, written in elegant script, and Jason had his arm around Linda's shoulders. But it was the caption that destroyed me. "Happy Mother's Day to my real mother. Thank you for everything, Linda. You have shown me what a true family looks like." I read it again, then a fourth time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. My real mother. Not a mother figure, not someone special. Not even stepmom. My real mother. I scrolled down to the comments. There were already dozens. "She is amazing. You are so lucky to have her. Linda is the best. Happy Mother's Day. What a beautiful family. Not a single person mentioned me. Not one comment asked, 'What about your mom?' Not one person seemed to remember that I existed." I clicked on Jason's profile, went to his photos. There were recent pictures of him with David and Linda at various events. A barbecue at their house, a concert, a weekend trip to the mountains. Pictures of Linda cooking dinner, Jason helping her, both of them laughing. Pictures that told the story of a life I was not part of. I went back to the Mother's Day post, stared at it until my vision blurred. 28 years. 28 years I had given to that boy. 28 years of sacrifice and love and sleepless nights and skipped meals so he could eat better. 28 years of being everything he needed when no one else would. And in one post with 3 words, he erased all of it. My real mother. I set the phone down on the table. My hands were shaking. The couple at the next table glanced over, probably wondering if I was all right. I was not all right. I would never be all right again. The images flooded my mind, unbidden and cruel. Jason as a newborn, 3 in the morning, screaming with colic while I walked circles around the living room, bouncing him gently and singing lullabies through my exhaustion. Jason at 7, falling off his bike, blood streaming from his scraped knee, running to me with tears in his eyes while I cleaned the wound and whispered, "Mommy is here, baby. Mommy is here." Jason at 16, sobbing at the kitchen table after his first heartbreak while I held him and let him cry into my shoulder for an hour. All of it, every moment, every sacrifice, every time I put him first, always first, only him. Gone. Replaced by a woman who had known him for 3 years. A woman who had never changed his diapers, or sat up with him through fevers, or worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over his head. A woman who swooped in with money and charm and took the credit for the man I had raised. I looked down at the tiramisu. A tear fell onto the plate, darkening the cocoa powder. Then another. I tried to wipe them away quickly, but they kept coming. The waiter appeared at my side. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" I could not answer. I just shook my head. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Can I get you anything?" "No, thank you. Just the check, please." He left and returned a moment later with the bill in a leather folder. I did not look at the total. I pulled 3 20s from my wallet, more than enough to cover the meal and a generous tip, and placed them inside the folder. "Keep the change." "Thank you, ma'am. I hope your day gets better." I stood up, grabbing my purse, my phone. I walked toward the door, keeping my head down, not wanting to meet anyone's eyes. The hostess called out, "Have a nice day." But I did not respond. Outside, the sunshine felt like an insult. The sky should have been gray. It should have been raining. Instead, it was a beautiful spring day, birds singing, families strolling past with ice cream cones and shopping bags. I walked to my car in the parking garage, my heels clicking against the concrete, each step echoing in the empty space. When I reached the Honda, I unlocked it, climbed inside, and sat in the driver's seat. I picked up my phone, opened the text thread with Jason, typed, "I saw your post." I deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. Finally, I just sent, "I saw your post." 3 words, simple, direct. I needed him to know. Needed him to know that I was real, that I existed, that I mattered. I started the car and drove home in silence. The apartment felt smaller than usual when I walked in. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the space I had lived in for 15 years. The faded couch Jason and I used to watch movies on. The bookshelf holding his childhood picture books alongside my teaching manuals. The kitchen table where we had eaten thousands of meals together. Everything here was tied to him. Every inch of this place was defined by my role as his mother. I walked to the couch and sat down still in my dress and heels. I did not turn on the television. I just sat in the quiet, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. Jason. He was calling. I stared at his name on the screen. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, I silenced it. Let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. "Mom, I am so sorry. I got confused about the time. Can we reschedule?" I read it 3 times. Got confused about the time, as if that explained the post. As if that explained calling Linda his real mother, while I sat alone eating chicken piccata in a restaurant where he never intended to show up. I did not respond. Another text. "Please call me back. I want to explain." Explain what? That I had been replaced. That the woman who gave him life, who sacrificed everything, who loved him before he even took his first breath, was not real enough. I set the phone face down on the coffee table and stood up. I walked to my bedroom, took off the dress, hung it back in the closet. put on sweatpants and an old t-shirt, washed the makeup off my face, pulled my hair into a ponytail. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. This was who I was, not the woman in the navy dress trying to look elegant. This, a 53-year-old teacher with gray roots showing lines around her eyes, hands rough from years of work. This was Bertha. And Bertha had spent 28 years being Jason's mom. Only Jason's mom. I walked back to the living room, sat down on the couch, and for the first time in 28 years, I asked myself a question I had never allowed before. Who am I without him? The answer terrified me, because I did not know. I had built my entire identity around being Jason's mother. My job as a teacher was secondary. My friendships were minimal, sacrificed over the years to make time for him. My hobbies, my interests, my dreams, all of it had been set aside, or forgotten, or never pursued at all. I was a shell, a vessel designed to hold and nurture someone else. And now that he was gone, now that he had chosen someone else, I was empty. The apartment was dark now. I had been sitting there for hours without realizing it. The clock on the wall read 9:30. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. And then, sitting there in the darkness, I made a decision. I needed to disappear. Not to punish Jason, not to make him feel guilty, but because I needed to find out who Bertha was, who she could be, who she might have been if she had not spent her entire adult life defined by one role. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and pulled a suitcase from the top shelf of my closet. I started packing. A week's worth of clothes, toiletries, my journal, the essentials. I called the principal at the school. It was late, but I knew he would answer. He always did. Mr. Harrison, this is Bertha. I need to request a leave of absence. 3 months. Unpaid. There was a pause. Bertha, is everything all right? No, I said honestly. But it will be. I just need time. Of course. Take whatever time you need. We will figure it out. Next, I searched for flights on my phone. Portland, Oregon. I had a friend there, Margaret, someone I had known in college but lost touch with over the years. We had reconnected briefly on social media a few months ago. She was the only person I could think of who might understand, who might give me space without asking too many questions. I sent her a message. Margaret, this is Bertha from college. I know this is sudden, but I need to get away for a while. Can I stay with you? I will explain everything when I get there. Her response came 10 minutes later. Come. Stay as long as you need. I booked a one-way ticket for the next afternoon. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and a pen. I wrote slowly, carefully, thinking about every word. Jason, I am leaving for a while. Not because I am angry, but because I need to remember who I am beyond being your mother. For 28 years, I defined myself by you. Your happiness was mine. Your pain was mine. I forgot I am a person too. I saw your post. Those words hurt more than anything I have felt. But I understand. Linda can give you things I cannot. That is not her fault, and it is not yours. I need time to heal. Time to find Bertha again, not just Jason's mom. Do not look for me. When I am ready, I will reach out. I love you. I always will. But I love myself too. And right now, I need to choose me. Mom. I folded the letter and left it on the kitchen table propped against the fruit bowl. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I was leaving behind. But also, thinking about everything I might find. In the morning, I called an Uber. I left the apartment at 11, locking the door behind me, carrying only my suitcase and purse. I did not look back. The plane landed in Portland just after 11 at night. I walked through the terminal tired and disoriented until I saw Margaret standing near baggage claim holding a small sign with my name on it. She looked older than I remembered, her hair gray now, but her smile was the same. She hugged me without asking questions. "Let's get you home." Margaret lived in a small house in a quiet neighborhood. She was married with 2 kids, ages 8 and 10. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Her life was full and busy, but she made space for me in her guest room, a small area with a fold-out couch and a window overlooking the backyard. "Stay as long as you need," she said that first night, handing me a cup of tea. No explanations necessary. I cried then, not because I was sad, but because someone had offered me kindness without demanding anything in return. The first few weeks were strange. I did nothing. I woke up late sometimes, as late as 10 in the morning, shocked that I had slept so long. Margaret brought me coffee and toast, then left for work. The house was quiet during the day, just me and the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Portland was different from home. The air felt cooler, damper. Everything was green. The people seemed slower, less rushed. I walked through the neighborhood, no destination in mind, just moving. One morning, Margaret suggested I try her yoga class. I had never done yoga in my life, but I went. The studio was small, filled with women of all ages, all body types. The instructor was patient, guiding us through poses I could barely hold. Afterward, my muscles ached, but I felt something I had not felt in months. Peace. I went back the next week, and the week after that. Margaret also invited me to her book club held at the public library on Wednesday evenings. 7 women, all in their 40s and 50s, gathered to discuss novels and drink cheap wine from paper cups. I listened more than I talked at first, but slowly I began to share. Not about Jason, about other things, books I had read, places I wanted to visit someday, dreams I had set aside. One woman, Susan, 56 years old and widowed, said something that stayed with me. "We spend so much time being what others need. We forget to be ourselves." I nodded, tears in my eyes. Yes, exactly. I started writing in my journal every night. Not about Jason, though he appeared in my thoughts constantly. I wrote about me, about what I liked. Coffee with cream, no sugar, the sound of rain, old movies from the 1940s, the smell of books, things I had forgotten I cared about. One afternoon, walking through a park near Margaret's house, I saw a cluster of tiny wildflowers growing at the base of a tree. I stopped, sat down on the damp grass, and stared at them. They were so small, so easy to overlook, but they were beautiful. I felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. 6 weeks after I arrived in Portland, an email came from Jason. The subject line read, "Mom, I am sorry." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The message was long. He explained that he had deleted the post immediately after reading my text. He said he realized how cruel his words had been, how much he had taken me for granted. He wrote about feeling torn between 2 worlds, wanting to be loyal to both David and me, but failing at both. He said Linda had started pulling away from him after the incident, telling him he needed to figure out his priorities. He said David had lectured him about gratitude and respect. He ended with, "I know I hurt you. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I miss you. I miss my mom. Please, when you are ready, come home, or let me come to you. I just want to talk." I read it 3 times, then I closed my laptop. 2 weeks later, I replied, "Jason, I forgive you, but I need you to understand. I am more than your mother. I am Bertha, and I am learning who she is. When I am ready, we will talk. Not now." but someday. I love you, but I love myself too. And right now, I need to choose me. I stayed in Portland for another 2 months. By the time I decided to go home, I felt different. Lighter. Like I had shed a layer of skin that had been suffocating me. Margaret drove me to the airport. Before I got out of the car, she hugged me and said, "You look like yourself again." I did not know what that meant until I caught my reflection in the airport window. My hair was longer grayer, but I was not trying to hide it anymore. I wore comfortable jeans and a sweater I had bought at a thrift store in Portland. No makeup, no pretense. I looked like Bertha, just Bertha, and that was enough. When I returned home, I did not go back to the same life. I kept teaching, but I started saying no to extra shifts to overtime tutoring sessions. I joined a community theater group and auditioned for a small role in a local production. I did not get the part, but I met people who shared my love of old movies. We started a film club. Jason and I talked eventually. We met for coffee 3 months after I returned. It was awkward at first, both of us unsure what to say. But slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild. Not the relationship we had before, where I existed only to serve him, but something new. Something where we both had space to be ourselves. He apologized again. I told him I forgave him, and I meant it. But I also told him this: I will always be your mother, Jason. But I will never again be only your mother. I am a person. I have a life, and I will not sacrifice that again. Not for you. Not for anyone. He nodded. I understand. It took time. It is still taking time. But we are finding our way. I learned something in those months in Portland, something I wish I had known 28 years ago. Love should not mean losing yourself. It should mean finding yourself through connection, through balance, through mutual respect. I spent so long being Jason's mother that I forgot to be Bertha. And Jason, in his thoughtlessness, reminded me of what I had lost. Losing him, even temporarily, forced me to find myself again. And in a strange way, that was the greatest gift he could have given me. I do not regret the years I spent raising him, but I do not regret leaving either. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. Not just of them, but of the version of yourself that only exists for them. Maybe that is what motherhood really is. Not holding on so tight that you forget to let go. Not just of them, but of the version of yourself that only exists for them. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your child is showing them that you matter too. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to walk away and find out who you are when no one is watching. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever had to choose yourself when it felt impossible? Share your story in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more stories about real life, real struggles, and real resilience. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you are allowed to matter. You are allowed to choose yourself. I wish you peace, strength, and the courage to find your own path. Take care.